Hey everybody, my name is Brendan Noble and I'm a young adult author. Today we will be talking about how to price your ebook and your paperback, whether it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, or whatever retailers you're working with. We're going to look at different pricing strategies and which one is the correct one for where you are in your career. There's a lot of different options there, so let's dive in. I just want to make a note ahead of time for those of you that are in Kindle Unlimited. This will be a little bit different for you as your book is technically free on Kindle for anyone within the program. So a lot of the pricing won't affect your Kindle Unlimited reads, but it can affect your sales off of Kindle Unlimited. So this is still very relevant for people that are part of that program. Just make sure you understand that concept. So first, let's look at some things that you have to consider when pricing your ebook and your paperback. The first thing is what genre you're part of. Whether it's romance, young adult, thrillers, or whatever genre you're part of, there's different pricing schemes for each genre. So what you need to be able to do is look at different indie authors within your genre and see what they're pricing at and how it's working for them. Why I say indie authors specifically is because traditionally published authors tend to have their books priced much higher on ebooks, and that's because their publishers have deals with groups such as Barnes & Nobles or Waterstones, where they price the ebook higher to make the paperback and hardcover books more attractive. And so the pricing mechanism really doesn't work because the traditional publishing industry has a lot more advertising weight and in-store weight behind it, so we really have to look at other indie authors. You should be able to find some successful ones in your genre. If you can't, I would question why you're writing in that genre. So just take that under consideration. If you're in thrillers, if you're in romance, if you're paranormal romance, if you're in young adult, there's a lot of different authors out there and potential ones to look at. So take a look at those first of all and before you go into considering these. But I'm going to go over some in general and say what works for each categories as I've seen. One popular option that often works for especially new authors is the setting your first book free and then having the other ebooks slightly higher price, such as $2.99 to $4.99. Obviously you can't make the paperback free, but in general, paperback books tend not to be as responsive to price, so you don't need to worry as much there. But in general, this mechanism will be focusing on a low price, especially for that first book, to try to convince as many readers as possible to get involved in the series. Now, the best way to actually do this, in my opinion, is what they call the book funnel, where you have your books actually priced on Amazon or elsewhere at either 99 cents, $2.99, or slightly higher, but still at a lower front, but then offering the book for free to anyone who joins your mailing list. Now, this will be talking about the power of the mailing list, and we'll talk about in a different video, but this can get your book out there for free to people who will eventually go and purchase later books in the series, hopefully. But it also allows you to gain access to their email so you can advertise to them new releases. The disadvantage to the strategy is you don't make any money on the first book, and this is why a lot of people will still give their book away for free with the book funnel approach, but have a actual price on the first book on stores so they can get the best of both worlds. And it can also be kind of considered a second method, which I call 99 cents as the first book and then a higher price for the rest. For example, with my series, the PRISM files, Fractured Prism is currently 99 cents. I also do the book funnel approach, so I can give people the book for free in response to their email, or they can purchase the book for 99 cents. And then later books in the series are currently $3.99, so I make a higher profit. That way, there's still some bar to get your first book, because often free books can be considered lower quality, and that can cause problems. There's also a lot of bargain seekers in the Amazon and the reading market, and if they read the book for free, there's a chance they won't read the later books in the series that you actually have to pay for. There's risk with both of those, but having either a free book or a 99-cent book up front, especially for a new author, is a really great strategy. It has a low barrier of entry for someone to get into your series, and if your series is good, the read-through on your series will pay off as people go and read later books in the series. On paperbacks and hardcover or whatever you want to do with these, there's also the ability to keep those prices lower as well, to lower the barrier of entry for anyone that wants physical copies. If you have pricing for your audiobooks as well, try to keep that lower. Again, this point of this, especially for new authors, is to try to have a very low barrier of entry for people to start reading your books. And if your writing is good, the hope is people will continue to read and read your books later on. And that's the thing. We want to be able to get avid fans out of this. And if you never get them to read that first book because your price is too high, you're going to really run a risk. This is a pretty well-rounded strategy, but it doesn't work as well for a really long book and standalones because, again, this really benefits from longer series where you can get people hooked and benefit from read-through. A more balanced method that a lot of people do is the $2.99 ebook method, and either keeping it with $2.99 or having slightly higher prices afterwards. This is kind of considered a middle ground when it comes to ebooks in the indie market, where it's high enough price where it's not necessarily considered a giveaway and might give your book a little bit more look of a quality to it. But you're also getting more sales because the price isn't that high, and you also on Amazon receive a 70% royalty rate instead of the 35% royalty rate you receive at the 99-cent level. So that can be incredibly beneficial. But you'll be missing out a lot of bargain hunters and who might read your series and get into it, because the $2.99 level is no longer really considered a bargain in the indie market. It might be for a traditionally published author, but they really work in a different world when it comes to ebooks than us, so we can't focus on that. For a while, I initially went actually with this method, and I had some success with it, but I found recently that the 99-cent method has allowed to have a lower barrier of entry for me. I've seen some people who have had this work incredibly well, especially if you're a slightly more established author. This can be a very beneficial thing, so you can get the higher royalties with the low barrier entry. But again, for a new author, people paying $3 for someone they've never heard of can be sometimes a hurdle. It's sad that the price is that low and considered a hurdle, but that's just currently the state of the market. So but $2.99 can be a balance between competitive pricing and making some significant royalties as well. So lastly, on series styles, there's the going more for a $4.99 style approach, which tends to be the high end for a indie book series. And some people will try to do this as looking to show it's a higher quality book. This can do well, especially for established indie authors. It can be sometimes harder to get people into the series, but if you have a significant following, this can be a big deal. You're going to get more money on royalties, and especially if you have a longer book in the series and gain $4.99 over and over and over again, you're going to get, with that 70% royalties, pretty good returns. But again, if someone's just discovering you at the start of this series, it can be harder to convince them, because at the $4.99 range, you're starting to get closer to that traditionally published territory, which, again, a lot of the traditionally published books are going to have more advertising behind them, and they'll have that advantage of getting their eye first, even though the price is higher. So we have to take that into consideration. But especially, again, if you are a more established author, the $4.99 route can be another one. It gives your book a lot more of an idea of quality. It's not pinpointed as an indie book right away. If this is paired with a great cover, a great blurb, and a great look inside on Amazon, this can be a very powerful option, but I would not recommend it for new authors. Again, $5 on the $4.99 is sometimes difficult to convince people to read a person, especially on their first series. So take that in consideration. And if you want to ask though, I've been talking about series, what about standalone books? This can be difficult because, again, if you're not an established author, you don't have the advantage of read-through for later in the series. A lot of that read-through you'll hope will come through your author following beyond this one book, but it's an entirely different matter. So on this, you can range it anywhere. I wouldn't do the 99-cent thing because you're not going to make a lot of money here, but the $2.99 to $4.99 route can work and still be able to make money, especially if the book has high reviews, a good blurb, and a good look inside. You might be able to pull it off. It's difficult in the indie market, but it's not impossible. And that's all I have for you guys today on our talk about ebook and paperback pricing. If you have any comments on this or any questions, go ahead and comment down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say or what strategies have worked for you. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe down below. I'll be coming out with new videos every Friday to answer your questions about book marketing, book writing, and the news in books in general.